So moving along here, let's look a little bit more into various other things that we can do with operations. Now, as I mentioned before, there is the divide by zero scenario that could occur. So let's define that. Let's say we have another number value. Let's set that to 5. And then we have a fourth number value here, and we'll set that to 0. Now, we have a scenario in most programming languages where if you were to do the actual math, like 5 divided by 0, it's going to throw an error message or an exception. Generally, an exception is an error. If you think of those two things synonymously, then basically that's what it is. So to handle that scenario, there's something in programming, but specifically here in C# called the try-catch block. And basically the try-catch block allows us to gracefully handle an exception or an error message, and avoid stopping the program, or avoid the program just failing execution. So I'll show you guys exactly how that works right now. So I'm going to first define the try block here. So within here, I want to just kind of demonstrate the exception itself. So let's say here int division, or let's use something here. Let's say int quotient, something else. That's going to be equal to num3 divided by num4. Okay? Now normally this line alone should cause the exception. But just to be certain, I'm just going to console.write line here just to be certain that we are basically jumping to the next block of code on failure. So I'm going to specify here the quotient, just output that to the console if it works. So in the case of this line not working, then we need to be able to catch this exception. So to do that, we need to just specify the catch keyword and add some parentheses here. And the specific error message or exception type we're looking for is called DivideByZeroException. And then we specify a variable after that of EX, which normally stands for exception by convention. So now we're basically saying, in the event that an error happens within the try block above, catch that exception and attempt to handle it gracefully. So that way your program doesn't just crash. It'll continue running, but you may be able to output this error message to, let's say, a log or a database file or whatever we're going to output it and save it for, or save it to rather. So let's just output something here just to make sure that this is working. So I'm going to do console.write line, and in here I'm just going to put a string literal of an error occurred. And in here, I'm going to say EX, which is the exception object or variable. And there is a property on it called message. So we'll say .message. And this is a built-in property as part of the .NET exception base class, which basically allows us to output the actual error message to the console or to the UI, wherever we're outputting our data. So with that being said, I should be able to run this and I should see an error message. So let's give that a shot. Let's run this. And there we go. We see an error occurred and basically attempted to divide by 0. So whenever you get this exception message, basically this is a way to handle the exception gracefully, so that way your program just doesn't crash. It'll continue running, and you'll probably have like a log on the back end that will be able to capture this error message, and then you and your team can look at it and figure out the best way to remediate it or to triage it in that way. So yeah, that's basically how that works.